Let's implement authentication with session in Axum server. First, let's go to cargo.yml file. We need to add some dependencies. We add a token for synchronous runtime, SQLX to connect to Sqlite database, 30 for serialized and deserialized JSON, Axum for backend server, Axum session for Axum session, Axum session auth for authentication in session, Axum session SQLX to connect to session to the database, bcrypt to encrypt password, async treat. We can implement a async method, anyhow for error type. Let's go to main.rs file. In main.rs file, first let's add attribute token main for main function. So we can make its main function as a sync function. Then let's create a function to connect to Sqlite database. So async function -, let's give the name db. Return type will be poll. Hold Sqlite. In this function, let's create a variable, give it the name poll equal to, we will call SQLX, Sqlite poll connector function. Then we will pass a connector string. It will be SQLite //db.sqlite. So it will open db.sqlite file in our project folder as a database. Then let's call await to handle the filter and unwrap to handle the result. Let's create this db.sqlite file. So in project directory, let's create a new file. Give the name db.sqlite. Then let's create a table in this database. So we will call poll.sql. Then let's write a SQL. Create a table if not exists. Let's give it a name users. Let's add a first field ID. Type will be integer. Primary key. Auto increment. So its ID will be unique and automatically increased. Second field, let's give it a user name. Type, give it a text. Third field, let's give it a password. Type also text. Then let's call await to handle the filter and unwrap to handle the result. Let's insert the first user into database as a guest user. This user's ID will be 1 and will be unauthenticated. Before we insert a guest user, let's first check whether or not we already have the guest user in this database. Let's create a struct type to query data from database. Struct. Let's give it a name user SQL. It will have same fields as this table user. So ID, let's give it an integer type _2. Username, let's give it a type of string. Password, let's give it a type of also string. Then we need to add attribute derive from row, import from SQLX. Let's create a variable rows equal to, we will call SQLX query as function. Then let's write a SQL. So select from user. We will add a while condition. While ID equal to $1. Let's call bind method to bind the value 1. Then let's call fetch all method. we'll pass the reference of this poll as argument. Then let's call await to handle the future, and wrapper to handle the result. Let's add a type annotation for these rows. It will be vector, hold is user SQL. Then let's check if rows the len equal to 0. So it means we didn't find the user whose ID is 1, so we need to insert that first user as the guest user. Let's call SQLX query function, insert into username, password. We don't need to insert the ID for the user because the ID will automatically generate. Then values $1 and $2 here, $1. Let's call band method. Let's give it a username guest. Also give it a password guest. Let's call execute method. Then pass this poll as argument. Let's call await to handle the future and wrapper to handle the result. So we will insert a username is guest, password is guest, and its ID will be 1. This user will be the guest user. Last, let's return this poll. Let's create another function to create a session store. Let's create a single function, f1. Let's give the name session. Let's add a parameter to this function. Give the name poll. Type will be poll Sqlite. Its return type will be session store. Hold a session Sqlite poll. Session Sqlite poll we import from Axum session SQLX. In this function, let's first create a config. Let's create a variable, give it a name config equal to, we will call session config default function. Then we can call with table to specify the table name in the database for session. So let's give it a name session table. So it will store session in this session table in database. Then let's call with key method. Then let's call key import from Axum session generator function to generate a key. Then let's create a session store variable equal to, we call session store new function. And between this session store and the new function, we will use the turbofish syntax to specify the database polls type. So its type will be session SQLite poll. In this new function, first argument will pass this poll, and it will be in option. So it will be sum hold poll the we will call colon method to colon it. Then we call into method to convert this poll from poll SQLite to session SQLite poll. Second argument, we will pass this config. Then let's call await to handle the future and wrapper to handle the result. Last, let's return this session store. Let's define a function to create a new router. So let's define a function, give the name app. Returning type, we will give it a type router. Import from Axum. In this function, let's create a new router and return that router. So we will call router new function. Let's add a router to this router. Let's give it a path slash. Let's give it a method get. In this router, let's pass a sync closure. A sync. Let's just return hello world. Let's add another router. Let's give it a path register We use this route to register user. Method will give it a post. Let's pass a handler register. Later, we will define this register handler. Let's add another route. Give it a pass login. We use this route to log in user. We give it a method also post. Let's pass a handler login. Later, we will define this handler login. Let's create a route. Give it a pass logout. We use this route to log out user. We give it a method get. Let's pass a handler logout. Let's define last route. We give it a pass protected. We give it a method get. Let's pass a handler protected. Let's add a middleware to this route. So after this get method, we'll add a root layer. Then we will call from function. Then we'll pass a middleware auth. Later, we will define this middleware auth. So we use this middleware to verify user in this protected route. If user is authenticated, it can access this route. If user is not authenticated, he can't access this route. Let's add a layer. We will call auth session layer new function to create a auth session layer. Between this auth session layer and the new function, we will use turbofish syntax to add a type annotation. First is the user type. We use this user type for auth session. So let's define this user type. We will define a public struct type. Name is user. We need to add 3 fields to this type. First is pub ID. Type is I64. Second is pub anonymous. Type is boolean type. Second type is pub username. Type is string. Then let's add attribute for this derive colon. Second type is turbofish is ID type, so I64 is type. Third type is session Sqlite poll. Last type is Sqlite poll. We need to pass database poll into this new function, so let's add a parameter to this app function. Let's give it a name poll. Type will be poll Sqlite. And this poll should be in option, so we will put the option hold this poll. Then let's call clone method to clone this poll. Then after this new function, here we will call with config method. Then let's create a auth session config. So let's create a variable, give it a name config in this app function equal to, we will call auth config default function. Between this auth config and the default, we will use turbofish to specify a type I64 for the ID type. Then we will call with anonymous user ID. So we will pass the ID 1 as the anonymous user ID. And this ID should be in option, so sum hold 1. We pass this ID 1, that's why we define a guest user is the first user. This guest user ID is 1. Then let's pass this config into this with config method. Then let's add a layer. Will be session layer new function. We will pass a session style as argument, so let's add another parameter to this app function. Let's give it a name session style. Type will be session style. In this session style is the type session Sqlite pool. Then let's add with state to share state across routes. We will pass this pool as a shared state. So pool. In this auth session layer, we get an error. Tell us we need to implement authentication trait for this user type. So let's implement this authentication treater. So IMPL authentication for user. Then we need to add a concrete type for this authentication. First type is user type. Second type is ID type, I64. Third type is Sqlite pool. Then it tells us we need to implement a method load user is authenticated, is active, is anonymous. So let's implement this method. -load user is active, is anonymous, is authenticated. Let's add an attribute for this implementation block. So async treat. So after we add this attribute, we can make this method load user as a async method. So let's add a async keyword before this method. Let's remove this lifetime parameter here. Also, let's remove this. Let's remove this return type. We will give it a return type result. First type in this result is user. Second type in this result is anyhow arrow. In this load user method, let's check this user ID. If user ID equal to 1, so it means this user is guest user. We'll return OK. User ID is user ID. Anonymous is true. Username, let's just give it a guest toString. Else. So this user is not a guest user. So let's fetch data from database by this user ID. Let's create a variable, give the name user. Let's give the type annotation user SQL equal to, we call SQLX query as function. Then let's write a select asterisk from user where ID equal to $1. Then let's call band method to add a parameter value is ref user ID. Then let's call fetch1 method to fetch this user. Then we will pass this poll into this fetch1 method as an argument. This poll is option Sqlite poll. So we need to call poll.unwrap. Then let's call await to handle the future, unwrap to handle the result. Then let's return user in OK. So OK user ID will be user.id. Anonymous will be false. Username will be user.username. Here user ID should be I64 type. Let's add as I64. Here let's import this async treat attribute. So at the top use async treat. Then there is no error on this load user method. This is active method. We will return opposite value of the anonymous. So exclamation marker self.anonymous. Is the anonymous method will return self.anonymous. Is the authenticated method will return opposite value of self.anonymous. If user is anonymous, he will be not authenticated. Let's define this reject handler. Here, let's define a sync function. Hyphen, we give it the name register. Then we will add a parameter, its state poll. Type will be state poll Sqlite. To get this shared state poll, let's add another parameter, JSON. In this JSON, let's give the parameter name user. Its type will be JSON. Hold on, let's create a struct type. struct. Let's give it a name user request. Let's add two fields. Username type will be string. Second field is password type also string. Then we need to add attribute derive deserialize. So we can deserialize JSON data to this user request type. Then we will pass this user request type in its JSON. So we can get a user input value from request. Returning type, we give it a impl into response. We need to make sure user input username is unique. Let's create a variable, give it a name rows. Let's give it a type annotation, will be like user SQL equal to, we call SQLX query as function. Then let's write a select asterisk from user where username equal to $1. Then band is user.username. Then we will call fetchOut method, pass a ref poll as argument. Then let's call await to handle the future and wrapper to handle the result. Then let's create a if expression. If row.len to get the length of this row not equal to 0. So it means we find a user by this username in database. Let's format a message. User name is already taken. Username. Let's send a response status code. By the request and the message into response. Else, this username is not taken, so we will hash the password from the user. Let's create a variable, give it a name hash password equal to, we'll call bcrypt. Hash function will pass a user.password. Second argument will pass a cost. Let's give it an integer value 10. Then let's call a wrapper to handle the result. Then we need to insert a username with this hash password into the database. Let's call SQLX query function. Then insert into username password values $1, $2. Then we will call band method to band the username as the first parameter and band again hash password as a second argument. Then let's call execute method. We'll pass a ref poll as argument. Then let's call await to handle the future and wrapper to handle the result. Last, let's send a response status code. OK. Register successful. Into response. Then let's create this login handler. So async -login. We'll add a parameter auth. Type will be auth session. In this auth session, we will specify the type user and the ID type assist4 and the session Sqlite poll. Second parameter will add a state poll to get the database poll. Third parameter is JSON user to get the user input value from request. Returning type we give it a impl into response. First, we need to check user input username whether or not in the database. So let's create a variable rows. Give the type like user SQL equal to SQLX query as select asterisk from user where username equal to $1 the find ref user the username the fetch all method ref poll the await the unwrapper. If rows the length equal to 0, this means there is no user of this username in the database. So let's format a message. Username is not registered. User the username. Then let's send a response. Status code bad request msg the into response. Else we find that a user by this username in the database, so we need to verify the user input password. So let's create a variable, give it a name, it's valid equal to, we call bcrypt verify function. First password is user input password, so user the password. Second password is a hash password from database. So the user will be the first element in this rows. Let's pass rows 0 the password. Let's call a wrapper to handle the result. Then it will return a boolean value. If the password match, it will return true. If password not match, it will return false. So let's add a if expression. Is valid, it's true. It means user input password is correct. So we will call auth the load user. Then we'll pass the user ID as argument. It will be row 0 the ID. Let's send a response status code. OK. Login successful. The into response. Else. This means user input password is not correct. So let's send a status code. Unauthorized password is incorrect. The into response. Here we should pass the ID is type i64. Let's change this type to i64. So as i64. After we successfully log in user, we call login user method on its auth session. It will load the user into auth session. So its anonymous will become false. Its authenticated will become true. Let's define its logout handler. So async -logout. We only add one parameter is auth session. Returning type we give it a impl into response. In this function, we just log user out of the auth session. We will call auth the logout user method. Then let's send a response. Status code OK. Logout successful. The into response. Let's define this auth middleware. It will be a single function. Auth. We will add a parameter. It's auth session as the first parameter. And the second parameter will be request. We add a mute keyword to make this request to be mutable. So later we can attach data to this request. Type will be request, import from Axum. Last parameter is next. Type will be next, import from Axum middleware. Return type, we give it a IMPL into response. So we will create a if else expression. If auth that we will call is authenticated method on its auth. If user is authenticated, it will return true. Then let's get a user from auth session. Let's create a variable user equal to, we will call auth the current user. It will return option. So let's call a wrapper to handle the option. Then let's call colon method to colon that user. Let's attach this user to request. So rec the extensions mute the insert. We will insert this user. Then we will call next the run method and pass this request rec as argument. Then we will call await. Else user is not authenticated, we will send a response. Status code unauthorized. Let's send a message. Guest, you are unauthorized. The into response. Let's create this protected handler. So async -protected. We'll add a parameter is extension. Let's give it a name user. Type will be extension user. We use this extension to get the data we attached to this request in this middleware. Give it a return type IMPL into response. Let's format our message. Let message equal to format hello. Your ID is first is username. Second is user ID. Then let's send a response. Status code OK. And this message into response. Let's go to the main function. In main function, let's create a variable, give it a name pool equal to, we will call db function.await to get the database pool. Then let's create a variable, give it a name session store equal to, we'll call session function. Then we'll pass this pool.colon as argument. Then let's call await to handle the future. Let's create a variable, give it a name app equal to, we'll call app function. We'll pass this pool as the first argument and this session store as the second argument. Let's create a listener equal to, we'll call Tokyo night TCP listener band function. Let's pass address 0.0.0.0 colon 3000. So this listener will listen on localhost 3000. Let's call await to handle the future and unwrap to handle the result. Let's serve our app and the listener. Axum serve listener as the first argument, app as the second argument. Then let's call await to handle the future, unwrap to handle the result. Let's start our server. In terminal, let's run cargo run. Let's go to the database file. You can see it will create a user table. In this user table, it will create a first user, its guest user. Its ID is 1. Let's use postman to send a request to our server. Let's open a new tab. Let's first go to the localhost 3000 protect root. So let's send this request. Because we're not a login user, so we are not authenticated, it will send a response, guest, you are unauthorized. Let's open a new tab. Let's go to localhost 3000, register. We change the method to post. Here we choose the body, row, JSON. We write a JSON in curly brackets. First field is user name. Let's give it a value Jim. Second field is password. We give it a password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's send this request. It will tell us register successful. Let's try to register same user again. Let's send this request again. This time it will tell us username Jim is already taken. Let's open a new tab. Let's go to localhost 3000 login. Method will change to post body row JSON user name. Let's give it a username, not a register. Password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's send this request. It will tell us username Pam is not registered. Let's change this username to Jim. Let's change this password to incorrect password, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's send this request. It will tell us password is incorrect. Let's change the password to correct password, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's send this request. It will tell us login successful. Let's go back to this localhost 3000 protected root. Let's send a request again. This time you can see it will send a response. Hello Jim, your ID is 2. Let's open a new tab. Let's go to localhost 3000 logout to log out user. When we send this request, it will send a response logout successful. Let's go back to this protected root. Let's send a request again. This time it will send a response, guest, you are unauthorized. This is how we implement authentication with session in Axum. Hope see you next time.